so happy to be set up in such a beautiful way by the previous lectures. So my work deals a lot with embodiment and embodied knowledge, and I love thinking about the way that we can only know the world through the body, and that we could project or kind of project the thinkable in towards the future through the knowledge that we achieve through the body, right? And then thinking about the ways that the body gets replicated in our intuition about how to build machines and how to build software. I'm curious, although it's a little bit outside of the scope, although maybe not, maybe we can come back to that. I'm curious about how computation, quantum computation will change the way that we think, right? So I think up until this point, we've been computing based on a biological or kind of mechanical physical model. And so once we start moving towards quantum computers, how that's going to change. A little bit outside the scope of this, but I think interesting to think about. So I'm going to just describe a recent project, and then I'm going to kind of bounce back in time, and then we'll come back to this maybe at the end. But also set up beautifully. So this is a project inside of the sculptural element here in the center. There's a server. You can log on to the server on site. Let's see here. Again, for the first time, .online. It's now been moved off. It's still online, but it's now housed on my server, not necessarily within the sculpture. When you go to that site, you find a web page. Welcome. Please find a comfortable position with your device, ideally laying down or sitting with the device on your chest near your solar plexus. Relax. Allow your energy to come into soft focus. When you're ready, tap the screen of your device to send your energy out into the World Wide Web. Your energy will be stored on a web page, hosted on a server inside Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, where the sculpture was installed, where it will be carefully looked after. The server will be refreshed with periodic energy healings. Once updated, the healthy energy will be sent back out onto the network. Okay, so on the face of it, I have a Reiki healer come perform a Reiki healing over the server. That data is stored through motion capture. And then you can go into VR, so in these 6 yoga mats on either side, you can go into VR and see a kind of a virtual embodied version of this Reiki healing session. So you can have this kind of record, this digital residue, if you will, of an actual Reiki healing session. The potential is there, right? So I'm turning my mechanical energy when I tap on my screen into an electronic signal. That electronic signal is being sent over magic Wi-Fi. It's being literally kind of pulled back down in the server, stored there. There's a little P script in the server that actually is storing that data. And then once we perform that service, it gets cleared out and kind of sent back out onto the World Wide Web. Now, on the face of it, again, I'm holding this kind of metaphysical truth, and then this kind of real engineering truth that I actually believe in, right? Do I believe in Reiki? I don't know. But do I believe that my cell phone signal can be bad, and will I go try to find a better signal somewhere? Yes, I will. So when I'm thinking about energy in the body, it's harder for me to define or to believe in. Yet when I think about these kind of invisible signals that get blocked in terms of Wi-Fi and telephone signals, then I'm fine to believe it. So I wanted to see what would happen if I could hold these two truths in the same place. And I'm not sure, I don't know. So a lot of my practice is speculative, and I create these kind of speculative gestures in order to press into the things that I believe, and I press into those places through my body. And I invite others to do so as well. So I was thinking about the technology that we create for network communication, the things that are kind of pulling the most resources in terms of energy, but also creating the most wealth right now, are these very kind of biologically based models, right, of computation. So massive server centers, thinking about the ways that communication networks and cables start looking like maybe a single vein down the body, right? or more like our veins, right? So if that's true, if we're kind of creating a technological body, a network technological body, then thinking also about what that body is sitting on top of, right? What are the energy requirements for that body? And how does that kind of technology then reorient our physical bodies, our social bodies. So this is an image of Puerto Rico after the hurricane, when it was really hard to get a cell signal. So cell signals became a valuable thing. And the cell towers themselves reoriented human bodies around them. The same way servers are kind of reorienting capital around them today. And so it's kind of the inspiration. This photo is the one that kind of was the inspiration for the Reiki piece. So I was thinking a lot about bodies and how do we know the body in these massive systems and these hyper objects. So the term coined by Timothy Morton, he's an eco-philosopher. Hyper object is something that's too massive and too distributed over space and time for a single human to kind of know in any real sense. So I was thinking about what are some ways that we perform a human body engaging with the Anthropocene. And I was having a hard time coming up with one, except for looking at the ingredients on one of my cosmetic bottles and thinking about the way that every day I perform this reskinning of my body with geology and minerals and biological material that we've kind of pulled out of the earth, repackaged, and then sent out over a network, redistributed. So I was thinking about cosmetic companies as a way, or the tool as a vessel to create a distributed performative action. So I made my own cosmetic company, Index Formulations. You can go to the website and purchase these cosmetics. They are functional, fully functional. Here it is installed. So I made a pop-up store at Cloaca Projects in San Francisco. And the copy of this, so what ends up happening here is, again, is this an art project? Is it purely retail? And I'm not sure that I know the answer to that, but can I hold both of those things? Because they kind of coexist in the same space. So this kind of passes, this project passes in the retail world, but on the back side of it, all of the advertising copy, I lean into aspects of the product's ingredients that are a little bit strange. So hermaphroditic algae, or if you get on in the website, you start reading about underground mycelial networks that can communicate under the radar. So there's this kind of, all of the advertising copy, and advertising copy in general is just strange. You can put anything together and it kind of works, right? It kind of functions. So I was pulling from like radical political texts, and then also like real science about some of the active ingredients, and kind of mashing it up to see what would happen. All right, so both of these projects, while very kind of different, also result from my speculations about visions for the future, and both of them kind of arise out of two conflicting visions I have for the future. One is where biology and technology are almost indistinguishable, and the other is where the land can no longer support the techno-human agenda. The other thing that results in my work, and it uses a lot of different types of medium and materials. Sometimes it's drawing, sometimes it's VR, sometimes it's animations. But it's all kind of rooted in this triad, where technology mediates both our perception, the body, and the landscape. This is an installation in San Francisco. It was also exhibited at a gallery in New York called Transfer Gallery. Where do I want to start with this one? I'll start with the mannequins. So the mannequins, I would use a lot, I use the body frequently, so 3D scans, 3D animation, and because I've been using the body and kind of making costumes and stuff, I'm on this listserv for a mannequin liquidator in Oakland. Strange. And I saw this gentleman here, he's kind of like laying down, and I was like, ew, gross. And so I was like, okay, I'm having a very strong reaction to this kind of like, this mannequin, but he was free. They had apparently 50 plus of these things. They couldn't get rid of them. I wonder why. It turns out he was he was liquidated during the American Apparel bankruptcy kind of liquidation period. So I don't know if you know why they went bankrupt, but it was because of horrible misogynistic actions of the CEO. And so of course his kind of, his psychology would kind of replicate, right, in the mannequins that he's choosing, or that his designers would then be designing for the clothes that they're making. So I picked him out. I knew I wanted him kind of in the exhibition. And then there was a female, his female counterpart who was like headless also, and kind of making this strange, almost magic gesture. So I didn't know if she was going to be in the exhibition. And because I do a lot of modeling, I make 3D models of all of my exhibitions and start playing with all of the elements. And so I was kind of putting her in and taking her out, and putting her in and taking her out. I wasn't really sure. And then I was doing something else in the studio that was making a lot of dust. So I covered both of the mannequins with white sheets. And then I did my dusty thing. And then I turned back around and I see her standing there with the cover over her. I was like, that's it. It's perfect. So I tried to make another 3D scan with the sheet on her. It didn't really work. And then I realized that in this exhibition, you can't really see it, it's off camera, but I also had a tapestry. And because I'm super anal, I actually gave like a cloth physics to the tapestry in my model. So I just took that tapestry and I rotated it over top of her and I let it drape. And that in the 3D model, and that was it. That was perfect. So this print is actually a 3D model with a cloth with a physics property kind of overlaid on top of it. Doesn't actually exist. So there are these kind of slippages between screen space and physical space that I'm really interested in. These two pieces, which were kind of in the back, you can see there's like a purple glow in the kind of back of the gallery, so that's what's happening back here. So I raised mosquitoes, colony of mosquitoes, as you do. I might not talk about that. But on the left-hand side, this is a weird experience, way more boring than you might think. On the left-hand side is a gentleman who I took a 3D scan of it. Maybe I might be able to pull. Let me talk about how I made it first. So there was, in the middle of the gallery here, you can see this wall jutting out. That's one side of this small room that kind of separates the front room from the back room. So I took the dimensions of that room, and then I made that space, I taped that out in my studio, and then I made a 3D model, 2 dimensions of that space. I took a 3D scan of a male model. He works as a model for free. He did not do this for free, I actually paid him. So he works as a male model. I took his 3D scan, and then I used motion capture data as I danced in that perimeter to then kind of puppeteer this scan that I had made. And because my dimensions, because of the 3D motion capture program that I'm using, it's from a Connect, so it knows where my elbow is, it knows where my wrist is, it knows where my knee is. So it takes all of those dimensions and then just kind of stretches the skeleton that's controlling his scan to my proportions. So you can kind of see it becomes this strange hybrid form between his body and my motion, and kind of his capable motions. And then I danced in that space and then I recorded the video. Let's see. This one actually might be online. Is it? I can do it in situ, as it were. So, yeah, it's okay, I got back up. So the motion capture also is kind of not very good because it's a free program, it's a Connect, it's super jittery. I'm not going to show you me actually dancing, but I'm happy to show you my dancing skeleton. So you can kind of see, I lose ground, I kind of come back ground. There's these kind of strange voguing patterns that kind of come out just because of the loss of the data. So as much as I'm interested in pressing into my physical capabilities, I'm also really interested in pressing into the capabilities of the technology. And I think that there, in those slippages, a lot gets revealed, right? Like the glitch is something that reveals something about the nature of the processor. And I'm really interested in how the glitch in the technology and the kind of the physical limits of the kind of human body, what happens when those two rub up against one another. So in this, in the installation, you can kind of see here, I've created a scrim in front of the dancer, and inside the 3D modeling program, I've given it kind of a soft, frosted texture, and then I project from from the rear onto a frosted glass. So the result then is this kind of strange shadowy figure, which ends up being way creepier than I had intended. but this is like something that I kind of find to be true about a lot of my work, is that it kind of creeps me out. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily a bad place to be. There's a lot of scary things in the world, and I want to make work that's about a lot of those important things. So you can kind of see, and the way that it's viewed, because you have to walk through this narrow hallway to get to the back room, you're actually kind of viewing this video, not necessarily front on, but actually more from your peripheral vision. And this side, this kind of peripheral vision is a space that I'm really interested in, primarily because of my work through VR, and thinking about what are the things about VR that make it so dramatically different than a flat screen environment. So one of the first times I was working with VR, I had I think the first dev kit from Oculus Rift, and I was moving in and out of the VR space and taking notes, and moving in and out of the VR space and taking notes in real life. And then I pull my headset up and I reach for my pencil, and my hand just hits my desk, and there's no pencil there. And I realized that the pencil was in the demo in VR. So I've never gotten confused about screen space, about my kind of physical, my physical space. So what is it about VR that can do that? When I walk through a wall in VR, my stomach turns. When I walk over a plane in VR, it's, you know, I know that it's not real, but my body can't believe me. And I think it's that peripheral vision that's doing it, right? I mean, that's the only thing that's kind of making a difference between a flat screen and an embodied kind of VR experience. So that being said, let's go back here. When I was thinking about this piece, I was thinking about a lot of things. I'll come back maybe to the peripheral vision question. But this was another a piece that kind of arose from it. So all of that work kind of came out of a conversation I had with a psychic, you know. So you go to, I don't know, if you're worried about the future, like who do you talk to about that? So I went to go see a psychic, and the idea was that I was going to eventually pull language from the script. She allowed me, she knew I was making a webinar piece, it was totally fine. And she was going to let me kind of pull language from our conversation to create a script, but that's not what ended up happening. Instead, she gave me an assignment. She kind of pinpointed somatic manifestations of my anxiety that were deep in the body, and it ended up being true. I wasn't diagnosed with a lot of the things that she had pinpointed until years later. But she told me that I should imagine a happy and healthy home, and I couldn't do it. I was like, could imagine the perfect studio, could imagine so many other things, but not the home. And the best I could get were these little tabletop vignettes, and I was like, where are they coming from? And I realized that they were coming from social media, images that I was seeing on social media, these kind of curated spaces of domestic space. And then so I realized that a lot of those images, I owned a lot of those objects, so I started 3D scanning my own objects and then restaging them in environments that I had seen in magazines and on digital social media. So some of them work better than others. This is my down sweater that I sleep in. Let's see here. And I was thinking about where those images might live. I made a catalog, but they actually do better. I think that their home is really back in social media. So I repost these all to Rhonda Holberton, my Instagram account, without, I hashtag them, but I don't make any kind of claims as to what they actually are. And my entire Instagram account is devoted to this, and some images that I've been collaborating with the adversarial network to create recently, but I'm not going to talk about that. But the thing is that these started passing as quote unquote real, because I think the screen is so small and our attention is not, the scrolling attention is not very, let's say, deep. So is this some sort of funny play, or is that the glaze? It's a 3D scan with a hole in it. Still life, Sunday morning, Some of them are more obvious than others that they're scans. All right, so this is where I come back to peripheral vision. So when we're kind of in that scrolling mentality, what are the things that we're kind of missing, right? And what is this peripheral vision, and what is its kind of importance in terms of our embodied knowledge and in terms of our embodied ability to kind of think about the future? So here's where I'm going to start reading. How am I on time? Cool. I can do this. So, because I don't know how to make notes here. All right, so we are living through a crisis of reality. In turn, we are beginning to see digital content shaping material reality. While this is not necessarily a new event, collective memories form the basis of our history, and people's understanding of history shapes how we think about the future. Technologies to deliver hands-free mixed reality displays will soon become as common as smartphones are today. At the same time, the material environment and physical bodies living within it are approaching a critical moment of climate-induced destabilization that can only be mitigated by collective action. If VR can create a situation in which the user's entire environment is determined by the creators of the virtual world, then it is imperative that the creators of virtual worlds take into account the collective needs of the physical one. Good engineers can anticipate the way a project could fail technically. And just as an aside, I was a mechanical engineer before coming back to teach here at Stanford and then at San Jose State, so I know a little bit about this. On the other hand, art is particularly good at asking questions, addressing the what if rather than the how to. Questions like, what are all the ways this project could cause failures in other places if it is successful, especially at scale? So like any sustainable system, there's actually a feedback cycle in this one, but it's simplified for impact. So I submit that the best way to find our way back to reality is through speculative investigations using the same platforms that undermine it.